Well, we know so many Ontario school boards have nothing but contempt for parents. So many trustees are control freaks and censorious thugs. But some school board employees would appear to also loathe teachers as well. At least those teachers that dare to speak out about problems. Case in point, an elementary school teacher in the Toronto District School Board says her day-to-day reality is one of, quote, fear, reprisal, and fear of reprisal, end quote. For example, reporting on acts of violence, well, that's verboten. The board likes to pretend everything is okay, and they just sweep problems under the rug. And joining me now to speak about this is the superb investigative journalist with True North. That would be Sue-Ann Levy. Sue-Ann, welcome to the Ezra Levent Show.
Thank you very much, Menzoid.
Pleasure to have you.
Where is your prosthetics? Why are you not wearing them today?
I think Ezra has made me put those back in the closet, Sue-Ann.
Okay.
But Sue-Ann, and of course you referred to the nonsense going on at one of the worst school boards in Ontario, the Halton District School Board. But your most recent piece in True North, it's entitled "The TDSBs Culture of Fear and Silence." What do you mean by that, Sue-Ann?
Well, it's been an ongoing thing, actually, Dave, and it hasn't improved. And as I note in the piece, way back in 2007, lawyer Julian Falconer, who was a bit to the left, talked about the culture of fear and that teachers were afraid to speak out. And there was a lot of, lip service paid to ending that sort of thing and allowing teachers to speak up about primarily violence in schools. And that never happened. Succession of school board directors, most of them getting woker by the minute. And then comes Margaret Wilson, an education consultant that I highly respected in 2015. She talked also about the culture of fear. Same reason, teachers are afraid to speak up. The administrators at the school board sweep problems under the rug, in particular violence, most especially violence. And fast forward to 2023, it's gotten out of control, absolutely out of control. And the big difference now is that teachers don't seem to care anymore about speaking up. Although they're anonymous, I've received a flurry of open letters. There's one more that I'm going to be writing about from the Peel and Toronto school boards about violence in the classroom.
And Swen, certainly in the popular press, we do see stories on a weekly basis about schools that are out of control in terms of violence and intimidation and bullying. I don't get it. If you're an educator, if you are caring for these kids in school while they're in school, and so much is said about so-called safe spaces, well, if the spaces aren't safe, in fact, if they're rife with violence, then what in blue hell does the school board, what do they have a problem with teachers reporting these problems? I don't get it.
Well, I think the two school boards in particular, Peel and the Toronto school boards, are deep into this anti-Black racism agenda, this anti-oppression agendas, where you as a white male, me as I'm a little bit down in the oppression. I'm more oppressed, but I am white. Are oppressing Black students. And they brought in a series of maneuvers that include critical race theory being that Blacks are oppressed and white people are the oppressors. And tantamount or in conjunction with that, they have relaxed standards of discipline. So the standards of discipline, they're no longer expulsions, no longer suspensions. Discipline is considered in these two boards in particular. And this did start with Kathleen Wynne, I might add. The discipline is considered oppressive. So it's like the lunatics are running the asylum now. And I'm just going to name the school board director. There's a constant theme. Colleen Russell-Brawlins came from the Peel board where there's a lot of problems, and now is at the Toronto school board spreading her ideology. And this is what's happened. Teachers are just fed up.
You know, so when you bring race into it, and I can only think of way back in 1963 when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. made his famous I Have a Dream speech, where he referenced that he dreams of a day where a person is not judged by their skin color, but by the content of their character. And you know, Sue Ann, I'm not making a joke here. If Dr. King were alive and well and saying that today, he would be accused of hate speech. I mean,
he'd be an Uncle Tom. He'd be an Uncle Tom. He would be considered an Uncle Tom.
Yeah. There is no such thing with these educrats when it comes to a colorblind scenario. Everything is race-driven, it would seem. How did we get here?
Well, I have to blame really Kathleen Wynne and the education ministry that she ran, and Mitzi Hunter, who's happens to be running for mayor in Toronto. They brought in a series of edicts through their equity and diversity unit in the education ministry that dumbed down the curriculum, talked about anti-oppressive or anti-Black racism. It is critical race theory, but they use anti-Black racism to try and tone it down a little bit. And it did start with Kathleen Wynne, and these school boards just completely woke, pandering to the, as we call it, the BIPOC crowd. And unfortunately, Doug Ford and Stephen Lecce has absolutely no guts to stand up to these school boards. And they've done nothing to reverse the problems.
You know, when it comes to Minister Milquetoast Lecce, Sue Ann, I constantly have parents come up to me in frustration saying, where the hell is the Minister of Education? He has the power to dissolve these out-of-control school boards, and he won't. He's AWOL. Here's the thing, Sue Ann, maybe we've been coming at this from the wrong angle. Consider this. What if Minister Lecce is on board with all this wokeism and critical race theory and political correctness, you name it? What if he himself is an advocate? That would explain his inaction on this file, wouldn't you say?
Well, I think there is some truth to that. I think that they don't want to start. They feel their hands are tied, which is ridiculous. They don't want to start with the school boards, but all they have to do is take over one or two school boards. I would start with Toronto. The trustees are bad, if not worse, than some of the, I call them educrats or administrators. All he would have to do is take over one of these boards, show the parents that he really cares about education and not about all this symbolism and wokeism, and that I think would set the standard for other boards in Ontario. The other thing is that I said way back when Ford took over, that they didn't clean out the woke people from the Kathleen era in the education ministry. And there they are still doing what they do best, providing edicts that have nothing to do with academics and everything to do with, well, they call it social emotional learning, which is ridiculous.
That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant Show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday, I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid's show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. We rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.